everybody, welcome to Gardening TLC. My name is Michelle, and today we are out at the Rock Yard at Benson Stone. It is where I go buy all of my hardscape materials right here in Rockford, Illinois. When I want a piece to add visually stunning interest to my landscaping, from outcropping to boulders to flagstone, this is where I come to get the material. And if you've ever wondered what all the different material is, how you use it, and what it looks like and what it's for, stick around today because we're going to go over a lot of this material and show you some absolutely stunning hardscape pieces. I am Michelle and I live in Northern Illinois Zone 5, and if any of you have watched my channel for any length of time and seen any of the designs that I've done, I love to use natural products like outcropping and fractured boulders and flagstone and just pieces like that in my designs. It helps create visual interest in my designs. It breaks up large areas. It helps with erosion control. You can build walls with it, paths with it. So many different things you can do with this material. I love using it when I'm landscaping. Pretty much all the material that I'm going to show you in this first yard that we're in is natural stone. It comes from a quarry someplace, whether it's shipped in or it's really super close. I know a lot of this stuff comes from Iowa and Wisconsin, but there are some things that they ship in from far away. Now, if you're looking for a place to buy this where you live, what I would recommend you do is a Google search where you type in natural stone, where to buy, your zip code, and hopefully something will come up near where you live. Here where I live, we're going to show you a lot of the different products that are available, and where you live, those products might be totally different. They might be different colors or different graining that runs through it, but the semblance of like flagstone, there's probably flagstone available where you live, or outcropping, it just might be a different color or a different type. But typically you can find all of this material, hopefully near where you live. Now, the other thing is almost all of the material that we're going to show you in this yard is sold by the pound. And typically that's how most of the rock places are going to sell it to you. Let's take a look at what's in here because there is some really beautiful stuff in here. We're going to talk about flagstone first. So how do you know what flagstone to buy? Well, it really depends on the application of what you're doing. Now, if you're thinking about making a patio out of flagstone, you need to know that because this is a natural material, it's going to have irregularities throughout it. Some are going to be thicker, some are going to be thinner. There's going to be, different grades up and down on the top of the flagstone, and it's really hard to get a nice level patio making it out of a natural stone. Now, there's lots of man-made flagstone out there made by Belgrade, Unilock, different companies that will make a flagstone looking product that will be very consistent as far as how high the height is. So that way, if you want to do a patio, that would be the way I would tell you to go. For me, flagstone is something that I'm using to either make steps, which I use the large stuff to make steps with. Also, I use it to create paths. Now, I don't necessarily like to use the little steppers unless I'm using it in a little bitty narrow path that might only be 2 feet wide. Then I might use a stepper, which is the smallest of the flagstone. Most of your steppers are going to be between 1 and 2 inches thick, and they're going to run anywhere from 12 inches to 24 inches, maybe a little bit bigger here and there. And they're not very wide, so they're pretty small, and they're harder to walk on in a wide path, and so you would use a bigger piece of flagstone to create a wider path. I also, if I'm ever going to lay flagstone in the lawn and make a path with that and then grow the grass around it, make sure you use a big enough piece of flagstone that the grass doesn't all encroach over the top of your flagstone, that it ends up covering it up, and you end up with a piece like this big in a couple years that's showing in the lawn. Get a piece that's big enough that you can actually walk on it. The other thing is when you're setting your flagstone, make sure it's comfortable to walk on. Walk it 2 or 3 times as you're setting the pieces and make sure that it's a natural tread. Now, how big they should be, I really think that depends on how wide the path is. The wider the path, the bigger the piece of flagstone. I am going to talk a little bit about pricing as I talk about the different stones, but no, pricing can wildly vary based on where you live. I live in the Midwest and it's pretty reasonable here. It's not, hit it out of the park so expensive that the average homeowner can't buy some of this stuff and put it in their garden. It might be different where you live. I don't know. So that would be something that you're going to need to research and do your homework, and do not be afraid to ask when you go how much something costs. We are going to start with steppers first. As you can see, they're smaller in size. They do range anywhere from 8 inches across to that one's probably more like 12 inches across. Anywhere from 12 inches, 8 inches, up to 24 inches. So they're smaller pieces to be used in smaller areas. Some of them are absolutely gorgeous. Now, most of this rock has to be cleaned off because it's got dirt and grit and dust and everything else on it. So sometimes it's a good idea to bring a bottle of water with you when you go to the rock quarry so you can dump some water and see the true colors of what some of this looks like. Now, this is a Chilton, and it comes from Wisconsin, and it's got some beautiful purples and blues and grays, just all kinds of different colors that run through it. But as you can see, you can buy this by the pallet. This one weighs 2,460 pounds. There's probably 16 layers, probably 20 on a layer. So roughly 320 to 350 pieces on here. See, this one behind it is a little bit bigger. This one weighs 3,986 pounds, and you can see they've marked that right there on the saran wrap. So if I want more, I can get this one. So that's Chilton steppers. So these here, you can come and look through the different ones. See how this one's got a little bit more of a charcoal and a gray look going on. Some of them are thinner. See, like this one is stating that it's a thin stepper, so it's probably going to be more like a 1 inch versus a 1.5. And then you just come over here, they got pallets and pallets and pallets of them. So these run right around 25 cents a pound. So a pallet like this, which is just a little bit over a ton, because a ton is 2,000 pounds, it's gonna run you, this one here, probably $450 plus tax here in Rockford, Illinois, Midwest. I don't know what it's going to cost you where you live, but that's what we would pay for it here. We also have a product that we sell a lot of here in Illinois. It comes out of Wisconsin, but this one here is an Eden stepper. It's just really a nice tan color, but sometimes it comes out of the quarry and it can be gray. So if you look down here, see, here's some more, and you can see how that one's kind of gray and that one's kind of tan. So these are a little bit bigger as far as the size of them, and so this would work well in a 2-foot, 3-foot path. And these also are great edging stones around a pond when you're trying to hide the liner or create the edge of the pond. These work really well for that as well. For something with a little bit more texture, you can see on the tops of these right here, these are also steppers. This one's called an oak field stepper. So this one is a lot more textured. This is the one that I like to use if I'm going to create steps because it has a little bit of a tread to it. And I like to use this on the edge of ponds. This would be probably my number 1 and 2 uses that I have for the oak field steppers. That's what I like to use it for. All right, this one here is called a charcoal flagstone. The pieces are bigger. They're anywhere from 4 feet to 6 feet across. Some of them are skinny, some of them are fat. A few of them have some browning in them, but for the most part, this is a charcoal stepper. Now, if I were to take this tan piece right here and flip it upside down, I'd bet the bottom of this is charcoal. But nice pieces in here. As you can see here, always know that sometimes you're going to have flaking on the top of your flagstone. See how that just brushed right off? So it might be a good idea too to make sure if it's really dirty or it's flaking, bring a little brush with you. Then you can brush it off because that's what it's going to look like. Not that. That's going to all flake off. But isn't this nice flagstone? This is the flagstone that I used in the cottage garden. I use this charcoal. I think it's so gorgeous. I like it when it comes stacked in the pallet like this because then you can almost go through this piece by piece, kind of like a clothing rack, moving the pieces from one side to the other to find the piece that you're looking for. A little bit harder to do when you've got to deal with stacked pieces like this. And I can tell you, the guys hate it when you go, can I have that piece on the bottom? They don't like that. They do have the Fond du Lac, and as you can see, again, here's a good example of a Fond du Lac that's tan versus a Fond du Lac that's gray. So you kind of have to look for the pieces that you want sometimes to find stuff that matches. The other thing you want to pay attention to is not all thicknesses will be the same. So when you're creating a path, one of the things you want to look at is if you look at this piece right here and you see how thick that is, and then you look at the piece underneath it, see it's not as thick. So you either are going to get everything and try to get them that thick or everything this thick. Not that you can't level it, because you can with sand and gravel with fines. It just is harder to do. Check out this one. This is called Red Mountain Flagstone. So you can find different color flagstone too. There's also one called, there's a New York Bluestone. Comes out of a quarry in Pennsylvania. It's crazy expensive. But if you're looking for like just that different color, because you want this to really stand out, you might want to look for something like this. And then you can see the edges on it when it breaks. See how it's that tan color? So that's kind of cool too. The next product we're going to talk about is cut wallstone. So cut wallstone is a natural product, but it's been cut. And basically what it is, it's a big piece of outcropping, and they have this big machine that they put it on, and it's got a splitter on it with teeth. And what they do is they go out like 8 inches, 6 inches, whatever size they're going to make the cut wallstone. They put the flagstone in the machine, and then they just cut it. And then they make these blocks out of it. Now you can do different things with cut wallstone. One, you can make a dry stone stack wall. Easy to make. For the most part, these are pretty consistent in height, ranging anywhere from 2 inches to 8 inches, depending on the product. A lot of them will be 8 inches long. Sometimes you can find them 6, sometimes 4. It just depends on where you're looking and what that company is carrying. Now, all of the product back here, I think, comes from the Eden Stone Company, outside of maybe the Chilton that they have. So I have material here that kind of matches the material down there that we talked about with the flagstone, so that you can work and incorporate all the pieces together in your landscape to make it flow and have some cohesion. And wherever you go, they should have materials that kind of flow together as well. Let's take a look at what the cut wallstone looks like. This is a Fond du Lac product, and this is a cut wallstone. All of the pieces are pretty much the same length, the same height, so it's really super easy to build with this. Now, this kind of stone usually runs right around 28 cents, 22 cents a pound. It depends on the product. A pallet of this usually weighs a couple tons, so it's a pretty solid, heavy piece. Pretty consistent. So a pallet like this will run you $800-900 plus tax, and then you probably have to have it delivered because you're not putting 4,000 pounds in the back of your pickup truck. Other cut wallstone, this is the same product. It's also Fond du Lac, but you can see here there's a lot of differences in the sizes and the thicknesses. A little bit harder to work with, a little bit harder to build with, because you have different heights, different sizes. But in the end, you actually end up with a really cool looking wall because of all of the different sizes. But it's a little bit harder to work with because you're doing shimming. Now, this is also what you would do with like mortar. If you're going to put mortar products in between the joints, makes it a lot easier to work with a product like this to make up for all the height differences. Next, we're going to talk about outcropping. Now, I really do like outcropping. Outcropping is beautiful to create vivid interest in a garden, to create an edge, to break up a large area, to build walls, steps, to put up an embankment. There's so many different ways you can use it. You can even just find one great looking piece and put it in your landscape and create landscaping around it for beauty. Now, this is a Chilton. As you can see here, sometimes you get these beautiful edges on here. Aren't they great? So sometimes if you're doing it where you're stacking it up, this is what I'm looking for, these beautiful colors and veining that run throughout the outcropping. Now, outcropping is not very expensive. Here, it's only 18 to 20 cents a pound. But this guy, this one guy right here, he probably weighs 1,200 pounds, just this one piece. So it's really heavy. To use this kind of product, you are definitely going to need some kind of machine to get it in place. And remember, this stuff is heavy and you're probably going to have it delivered. But they do sell smaller pieces as well that is called 1-man, 2-man, and 2-man, 3-man. Now, the 1-man, 2-man, I'll show you some of those in just a minute. 2 guys could probably handle that. You could probably get it in your pickup truck. You know, they don't weigh as much. The 2, 3-man, those are a little bit heavier. So even though they say 2 or 3 men, it's probably a little more like 4 or 5 men need to carry it because they are a little bit larger and they're still heavy. This size piece is going to be a lot more manageable. These are what you call 1, 2-man. And so usually 2 men can carry this. They're going to weigh probably 300-400 pounds, maybe 3 guys on a couple of these. They're kind of big. But look at those beautiful edges on there. Aren't those great? So there you go. You can find smaller pieces if they carry it. And this is what I would recommend if you only have a pickup truck and you don't have a way of getting it in place with a machine. I like outcropping a lot. I think there's so much that you can do with it, and it really makes a visual statement in your garden. All different kinds that you can get. Here's some more Chilton down here, but these are bigger. Some of them are thick, some of them are thin. Totally cool. This pile right here, these are shooting star fractured boulders. They come out of Wisconsin, and I think they got them from Red Granite Quarry. I'm not sure 100%, but that's where these came from. They used to get these ones out of Minnesota that they can't get anymore that had this iron ore running through it. It made them really super heavy, but oh my goodness, the veining was to die for. They were so awesome. But these are just as cool because every one of these rocks looks different. Let's take a closer look. You got to have a little bit of imagination when you look at these, because how they're laying right now may not be how they're laying when you put them in the landscape. I mean, look at this one. Isn't that awesome? Look at all the different colors and textures and just crevices, and oh, it's just gorgeous. I could think of a gazillion things. It's almost got like a little natural seat right there. Isn't that cool? Or you could actually drill a hole in this one up here at the top and then have the water run this way and do a bubbling boulder with it. Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, look at this one here. It doesn't look like much, but look at the veining in that. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh my goodness. And could you see that's more of a flat, short one? And then you create something around that. This is why I love fractured boulders, because every one of them is different. No one rock is the same. And I can think of a million different ways to place it, because sometimes, see how this is laying down, but see that flat bottom right there? Stand that baby up and see what it looks like in the landscaping. And it totally takes on a whole different dynamic as far as what you're doing with it. These are awesome. Now these probably weigh anywhere from 1,000 to probably 1,800 pounds, some of them. So they're pretty heavy. Now some of them are a little bit smaller, and two guys might be able to manhandle that on a dolly or a rock dolly or maybe a tree dolly. But I think most of these you're going to need a machine to get them in place. For me, I love the boulders. I want to hand pick mine out. I recommend that you hand pick yours out too. I would bring my customers here if they were into it and let them pick out their rocks. Some of them just trusted me to do it, and some of them just jumped onto my bandwagon as far as how excited I get about these boulders, and they would come down and have a good time picking out their boulder. See, this is a nice example of a fractured boulder in the landscaping with a little vignette behind it. So here we have a big blue angel hosta with a Francis William, and then this beautiful fractured boulder. It's got a lot of red elements in it, and that's the iron ore coming through in the boulder. This is an example of another one that's got the iron ore running through it. This is from a job I did, oh, I don't know, 8 years ago. Just look at that beautiful big flat fractured boulder in there. And that's what it was. It's just finding the right piece and then placing it in and just creating that little vignette around it. See, and then here again, we did a flagstone path that's going through the garden, and we just made sure that we used the right size pieces for the garden that we were doing. And as you come through here, it's got nice, comfortable walking spaces between the different pieces, and you just keep going around until it takes you all the way to the end. I also have an example of just flagstone and cut wallstone. Most of this came from jobs that we did over the years where we pulled it out because the homeowners didn't want it anymore. And then what I did was I collected it until I had enough to make this wall. And then we did this wall up against this fence right here so that we could just have this little planting area. And then we just planted the whole thing up with just hydrangeas. And then there's a few daylilies and stuff in here too. All right, this is a bubbling boulder that we put in this area when we first moved in. And basically what we did was we found a boulder that the water would fall well when we drilled the hole. And then what we did was we drilled a hole through the boulder from here all the way through. And then our little pipe just comes up right here, and we tucked it down in there to make the water flow. And then underneath this, you can see back here, see there's a basin that we dropped in. That's the reservoir that holds all of the water for the bubbling boulder. But that's a nice way to use a fractured boulder as well, is to create a water piece for yourself. My last example that I'm going to give you here is we made these steps right here, and they are made out of flagstone. So we use the bigger pieces, but you can see how we had to use other pieces down below to fill in the gaps, and then we just kind of layered it back. So it's kind of like a double layer, and then we just stacked on the back piece of the flagstone right here, and then just kept going up until we got to the top. So I'll back that out. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned a few things about hardscapes, what to do with them, what they are, what they look like. I'm Michelle. Make sure if you like our videos to subscribe below, leave your comment, share with your friends, and like. Thanks for watching, you guys. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.